Hey everyone. We have been talking a lot here lately about finding your voice and speaking up even when it's hard because the stakes are so incredibly high. Now, the circumstance that so many of you have been talking about lately is what about when speaking up means expressing differences among family members? That is hard. Now, our guest who is with us tonight knows a thing or two about that, and she has been listening to your stories, so she felt compelled to share hers because she's speaking up despite political differences in her family, and her brother is a US congressman. So I am just so pleased to get to invite on with us tonight Carol, who is the sister of Congressman Steve Chabot out of Cincinnati, Ohio's 1st Congressional District. Carol, thank you for being with us tonight. It's been so lovely to get to know you.
Thank you.
Now, Carol is a mother, a grandmother, an aunt, a sister, and she also happens to be a public school special education teacher. So, like basically a superhero. And she's also a former social worker. And, what has been really neat about how this whole conversation evolved is that it evolved like so many things do. Women connecting, talking, and things going from there. So the first time you and I talked, Carol, I believe it was not over wine. It was over coffee because it was like 10 a.m.
Right.
But it was so good to begin that conversation with you. And I just so admire you for having this conversation here with us tonight. So, Carol, let's just get right into it. And this is a hard topic when disagreements within families over political issues that are over deeply held values. Issues that strike to the very core of our principles and who we are. And you have made this choice to speak up. And, I just think it's so significant because a lot of us, if not all of us, navigate some kinds of political differences within families. But most of us don't have relatives who are taking votes that impact, millions of Americans' lives. So, Carol, what's it like to have a brother as a U.S. congressman?
Okay. Well, it was easy in the beginning because my brother started out in local politics. He was an independent candidate for city council in the city of Cincinnati. And so it was easy to support him then. We didn't have deep ties here in Cincinnati like a lot of families do. I mean, they stay here for generations, and my parents weren't from here. We had an unpronounceable name. You look at our name and you don't know what to say with it. Teachers always massacred our name. Nobody knew the name down here. It's French Canadian. So, but it was easy. He struggled back then to gain a foothold in politics, and he ran as an independent and didn't win the first time. And so then he ran again as a Republican, and he won the second time that he ran. And he was on city council, and then he was on Hamilton County Commission. And then in sometime in the 1990s, he decided that he was going to stick his neck out there and run for Congress. So I don't really quite remember exactly, if he was elected the first time or the second time, but it was easier to support him way back then. And as time has gone on, it's become a bit harder to support him.
And you are his constituent as well.
Yes,
that's right, Carol.
He is. Okay. He represents my district, the 1st district of Ohio.
Yeah.
And he was out for 2 years. When President Obama was elected in 2008, the district elected a Democratic congressman. And so that person was in for 2 years, and Steve sat out for those 2 years. And he regained his seat around the same time that the district was redrawn. So the city of Cincinnati was split right down the middle. And the city vote, I live right in the city, and the city vote was split among some rural and very conservative areas. So basically, our voice here in the city it's gone. So it's hard. I think it's hard for a lot of people. One other thing, when Steve was reelected again in 2010, that was shortly after that was when Citizens United was a Supreme Court decision that just opened the floodgates for political funding. Up until that time, funding had been limited, funding had been very controlled. And so no politician could be too beholden to anybody because donations couldn't be that much, and people had to say who was giving to them. Now the floodgates are open and have been open for over 10 years. And Citizens United has totally changed the political ballgame. The money that is in politics and the influence that's in politics is just, it's unbelievable now. And it has just totally changed politics.
Well, and it sounds like you've had the perspective of experiencing that personally through your brother. A lot of people talk about the policies and how, money in politics, but for you to have had the experience, watching the impact on, it's impacted every politician, but for you to have that direct experience, personally of seeing the impact on your brother sounds like a significant one.
Right. It has been. I've seen the change over time. I think one thing that happened during that time too was when President Obama was elected, one of the things that he ran on was healthcare, and he wanted to try to figure out a way for all Americans to have healthcare. And so the Affordable Care Act was enacted during his years, and that particular thing I think really caused some of the moving apart, some of the division between us.
Okay. So, yes, ma'am.
This is decanted, yes. Okay.
Yes, we like to decant, have our conversations here over wine.
Summer sangria.
Ooh.
Yeah, it's good.
Nice choice, Carol. Okay. All right. So tell us what happened. I know that the issue of healthcare has really played a significant issue in your life, which is how true of so many Americans.
It has, very much so. I'm in the middle of three brothers. I have two older brothers, one younger brother, where we're, pretty far apart in age until the youngest brother that came after me. And my parents were kind of older when they had me, and they were even older when they had the youngest one. So, it's how the family was. My oldest brother was 12 years older than me. And he was my person. He really looked out for me as a little kid. He had such an influence on my life. Just a great guy. He really was. He was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis, and he lived with that for about 18 years, and he passed away in 2018. So he had that condition that he lived with for a long time, and the decline. And our father died of cancer, lived with it for 5 years before he passed away. Our mother had some health problems later in life. She lived a long life. But the last approximately 7 years or so, she went through the decline that comes with Alzheimer's. And it's a heartbreaking disease. And I'm sure there's a lot of ladies out there listening, and you know what that road is like.
Hard.
And it just doesn't get better. It's a tough road. And I was her person, and I took care of her, really through those years. At the
Which
end,
is the experience again of so many women, right? It's so often the daughters,
right?
Stepping up and taking on that role, and it sounds like that was true for you.
Right, the families depend on us, and we do what we need to do. So, in spite of working and in spite of our own families and everything else too, we do it. It's who we are. We're strong. But it's a lot of pre-existing conditions. I mean, just among the six of us. And, so I was caretaker, predominantly. I would let the boys know, try to keep them in on decision making. And my husband was also a great support too. He always looked out for my mom and dad, and they always kind of depended on him, and they would call him, for just everything, just about. And, so Joe, we've been married 33 years, and he's a great guy. We have 3 children, and one of my own children became sick in college, and it was very sudden. It was kind of out of the clear blue, and I think at first we didn't know really how sick he was. I think his treatment was kind of just typical for the condition, and it was late 2008 when this happened, and college student, and I was out of work at that time. And my husband, thank God, was employed, and he was a 40-year special ed teacher for some of the toughest kids in our school district, in a special program. And so he really taught some tough kids over the years, but thank God he had health care, because this was before the Affordable Care Act. And so if you had a child that old and you wanted to keep that child on your health insurance, you had to keep them as a full-time student. He couldn't go to school. He was so sick. I mean, he was in the hospital day after day, week after week. And after a while, you start to, you see the next shift of nurses come in, and you see them reading the charts, and you see their faces, and you start to realize, he's pretty sick, and they're just, they're waiting for him to turn the corner. He needed surgery, and he wasn't well enough for it. So it's a really heart-wrenching time. And, after lots and lots of meds and lots of transfusions, he did finally, after a few weeks, turn the corner. We were able to get him home. We were able to celebrate Christmas in January. And he, the goal was to get him healthy enough then for surgery that would save his life. And his first surgery was a long surgery. It was a grueling, long surgery. And he survived the surgery. And I happened to ask his surgeon, what would have happened if we wouldn't have had health insurance? And she looked straight at me and she said, we would have told you there's nothing that we could do, and we would have sent you home early on. That, I will never forget that. I mean, that just,
Yeah.
We all love our children. It doesn't matter how much money you have. It doesn't matter if you have a job. It doesn't matter if you have health insurance.
Yeah.
We love our kids. We don't want to lose anybody. But if we wouldn't have had health insurance, we would have been sent home, and that would have been it. They would have just said, there's nothing else we can do. And
thinking about my young boys and hearing that story, Carol, I mean, yeah, that's powerful. I mean,
it's tough.
Yeah.
It's tough. So our kid was able to make it through. He had 2 more surgeries. In the meantime, we had to figure out how to get him into online classes. And back then, it wasn't at all as prevalent as it is now. So it was,
right.
He had to switch majors. And so, he had surgeries. And by the next fall, he was able to go back to school. And, he still has, to this day, he's got a chronic condition. I mean, it's something that he will live with forever. He has to take expensive medicines. He works, he has health care. Thank God. I mean, that's the thing that we're always, having to say to him is, if he considers doing something new or whatever, what about health care? It's a big thing for so many people.
Oh gosh, such a huge role in your life. And that does reflect the stories of so many people, but not all of us had a sibling, who was directly working on this issue, casting, life or death consequential
Right.
votes on these. So tell us about that,
Yeah.
like how the timing worked out, how that influenced kind of where it's led you today in terms of these differences and your decision, which is a hard one, to speak publicly.
After our experience, when Trump was elected in 2016, there was a Republican Congress, there was a Republican Senate. Shortly after that, they started installing Republican Supreme Court justices for life. So, and there was a big movement because Trump ran on one of the things was to get rid of the Affordable Care Act, to get rid of Obamacare, and replace it with something better. I think we're all still waiting to hear what the something better is. I mean, nobody has heard a word about what it would be replaced with. But lots of votes came up over and over again to try to repeal Obamacare. And of course, Steve, being my representative, was voting for this. And so this was, a number of years back, not real recent, but a number of years back, 17, 18 probably. I would send him messages before I knew the vote was coming up and just, try to remind him, Steve, we've got family members that have pre-existing conditions. We've got, my kid, needs health care. They're saying that people are going to be priced out of the market, like, yeah, sure, they'll get medicine, but, they're going to be able to charge a lot more for people that have pre-existing conditions. They're going to charge them more and they're going to price them out of the market. I would send him a private message, just pleading with him to consider what he's voting for and how it's going to affect people's lives. And, I'd get a couple words back like, yeah, right. Or, I always vote right. Or, just kind of offhand, just kind of saying that he thinks he votes correctly the way he votes. And then he'd go in the next day and there would be the vote against it. And, happened over and over again. And, it just, fortunately, John McCain did his, and, he did it when it was needed. And I think that kind of put it to rest at this point. Nobody's really at this point trying to get rid of it, but it's hard to forget that. It's hard to forget that the person, he's not only a brother, but he's a politician who is elected, and his job is to represent the people of the 1st District of Ohio. All of us.
Yeah.
And people need health care.
Yeah.
People need to be able to afford to go to the doctor. They need to be able to afford their medicine. Yeah. I can't say the system that's in place right now is the best. I kind of like to see Medicare for all because I think it would cover everybody and it would get a lot of the, money grifting that's going on in the healthcare industry out of it so that the money went to the taking care of people.
Yeah.
But there's, again, you've got Citizens United, you've got lots of big money interest people that are making sure that their voices are heard and that their politicians are voting the way they want them to vote. And
so Carol, fast forward now, here we are, 2020. I mean, this effort to repeal the Affordable Care Act was not long ago at all, but you have begun to find your footing and your voice, more lately in 2020 with Trump up for re-election, your brother, of course, on the ballot there again in Cincinnati. Why have you become more vocal now?
As a teacher, I kind of, I follow history. I like to learn. I follow politics. I listen to NPR all the time. I really try to be aware of what's going on in the world. And I don't think anybody can ignore what's going on in the political world these days because it's just so out there. Everything that happens is out there. If Nancy Pelosi, gets her hair done, it's out there.
Right.
Everything is out there.
Right.
Something comes flying out of Trump's nose, it's out there. So,
yeah, I mean,
I just,
the stakes are high.
yeah. So, following Steve and following his voting, I've been so concerned about the direction our country is heading in. Outrageous things happen. Our Constitution, our rule of law is just ignored, and nobody is calling Trump into account for this.
So why do you think that is, Carol? Why do you think, your brother who, you grew up with, you had, a childhood running around free in the neighborhood. We've talked about that, to see your brother now, it's such a consequential time in our history.
Mm-hmm.
Why do you think he isn't, doing what you're doing, speaking up?
It's surprising. It really is. It's very surprising. I just think that the influence in politics right now, I think Republicans don't dare step out of line. I think they're so afraid of the mean tweet. They're so afraid of the few, bullies, getting back at them and making them look bad. I don't get it myself, because I'm kind of putting myself out here, and it's not easy and it's not comfortable. And I know I may be judged. Going against family, being disloyal can be, it's hard to do, and people will judge you, and people will feel uncomfortable about you and about you doing something like that. But I feel like, honestly, our country is at stake. And I feel like if Trump gets elected again, and Steve is a supporter of Trump, I think we're in trouble as a country. And voting against, again, we've got a pandemic going on. People are trying to figure out how are they going to vote and not contract the virus and be able to vote this fall. Lots of people want to do it by mail. Lots of people are trying to do things early. I know we are. We've been kind of hunkered down since the middle of March, trying not to get COVID and trying to stay alive because we're older.
Yeah.
But being able to vote is it's a basic American right. And to see people trying to mess with the U.S. Postal Service, to put somebody in charge of the Postal Service that he has interests in the competitors and is removing sorting machines and removing mailboxes and doing all kinds of just absolutely crazy, to me, un-American things, to try to make it basically hard for people to vote.
And that was something you posted about recently, wasn't it? Right? That was Steve's vote against supporting the United States.
Yeah. There was a clean funding bill that came up, just clean funding. They're on such a shoestring budget right now. I mean, they're just barely surviving. People are trying to liken that service to a business, and it's not a business. It's just not. You can't compare it to a business. Everybody should be efficient. You shouldn't waste money, but that's not the situation here. This is a service, and it should be funded to the extent that it needs to do the work that it does. And, it's on a starvation diet right now. And so there was a clean funding bill that came up, and I could not believe that Steve voted against it. It was like a Saturday night, and it's like, I couldn't believe it.
I know, it must be so hard to watch, Carol. But so many people, do watch this and feel like the barriers that you just named, that discomfort of, well, if I speak out, then what are people going to think of me? What are they going to, are they going to say I'm not being loyal to family? And Carol, let me just say, I mean, you speaking out, I can't think of a better way for you to model your values for your children, for your grandchildren. If that's not family values, standing on principle for your own family, I don't know what is. But those are the barriers that people, that they face. And I think that it's important for you to name that and recognize how hard this is. So
it is hard. it's hard to do. And I think, I've read a lot of people's posts out there. And I see and I hear the heartache that people have with, being the only one among their neighbors, having a husband that, is trying to tell them how to vote. Just a kind of a funny side note. I thought of this when I was getting ready. My mom and dad my whole family was so different politically from each other. We were not the same animals at all. We were all over the place politically, the six of us. My mom and dad were total opposites. My dad was just very, very conservative. And he used to tell my mom, you better not vote for Kennedy. You better not vote for Jimmy Carter. You better vote right. And she would just look at him and say, well, I'm going to vote for whoever I want to. Yeah, and
she was ahead of her time.
She did. She was very spunky. Nobody was going to tell her what to do. And she'd say, I'm going to cancel your vote out. She would. But I see that when I'm reading people's comments, I see that. It's hard. Yeah. I see and hear and feel the heartache that's out there.
And so many women are making these decisions to say, okay, this is too much. They've gone too far. I'm no longer going to vote with my husband, or despite what my brother says, or whoever. Oftentimes it is, we've never seen the gender gap like we see in politics today, Carol. And I think that's part of what's so interesting about your story, about your mom's story. And, I think that what I'm learning from hearing your story and the stories of so many women who have been sharing their own in the groups that we're in together is there's no one path. Mm-hmm. There's no easy guidebook, right, for navigating this.
Yeah, it's hard.
But what we do know is that we can be there for each other, mm-hmm. and that we can share stories, and be that support system for one another. Something else we've talked a lot about here lately, right, is finding your people, finding that, your support. And so, by you offering to share your story in this community of women, I think that you really have given us a gift just by sharing your story. And it really is, it's a hard thing to do because these barriers are real. Yeah. And I thank you. I thank you for sharing it and for trusting me to share it, here with us together.
It was a little scary, honestly, at first, but I'm thankful to have found this group. I mean, these are just a lot of smart, thoughtful women who really, truly care about our country. Really, we want to have a country for our future. We want to have a country for our children, for our grandchildren. We don't want to live under an authoritarian regime. We don't want to live under a corrupt government. We've seen what happens in the world when things are like that and things aren't good. We have to hold on to our Republican democracy that we have. We've got to hold on to it so hard. And our vote in November, that's it. I mean, this is all we have left.
Amen, sister. Well, like I said, I think you have amazing values. And I think when I think about what the decisions I make that are tough and difficult in my life, I have to think about my kids and how am I showing up? Because they learn from our actions, right? So Thank you for taking, the hard path and for sharing it with us. And I know we'll keep talking and being in this together. So my last question for you is the one I ask so many people when they come on, is just simply this. Carol, what are you grateful for right now?
Okay. That's pretty easy. I'm grateful for my family. I really am. I'm grateful for my husband, my children, my grandchildren. I've got a small kind of circle of friends, and, I know I need to reach out and connect with them a lot more. And I'm thankful for this group too, because I think women making connections with each other, we can support each other. We're the doers, we're the glue. We can do so much together. We're strong. I'm thankful for my family. I'm thankful for all the women in this group too.
Thank you, Carol.
And thank you for what you do. You do a wonderful thing in your text.
That means so much. Thank you, Carol. All right. Well, I appreciate your support in being in this together. Okay, Carol. Well, we are, as we often do, going to have a few other women hop on now and reflect a little bit on this conversation and talk with those watching about other ways to get involved. But Thank you for modeling for us, speaking up.
Thank you, Katie. Thank you for what you do.
Thanks, Carol.
Cheers, everyone.
Cheers.
I'll start with the cheers. Okay, good. Laquita has hers. We have one more person coming, so we'll see if she has her wine. I think we have one more person coming. Well, we'll start anyways. So I'm Julie Womack. If you've been on here before, I'm the organizing director for Red Wine and Blue, and I'm going to let Laquita introduce herself. So go ahead, Laquita.
Hi, everyone. I'm Laquita Miller, another member of Red Wine and Blue and a mom here in Mason, Ohio.
So Laquita and I both live in Congressional District 1, which is where Steve Chabot is currently our representative. We're in Warren County. Hamilton County is also part of CD1. And oh, there's Jessica. So yeah, I'm going to let Jessica introduce herself in 1 second. All three of us are Warren County, which is part of Congressional District 1, represented by Representative Chabot currently. We're in Warren County, which is probably the more conservative part. Not that the whole district isn't conservative, but Warren County is definitely conservative. So I'm just speaking to those people in Ohio who may not know about us down here in Warren County. Jessica, why don't you say hi, introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Jessica Orr. I live in Mason, Ohio.
Yes, we all live in the same city. Mm-hmm. So I just wanted to briefly chat and see what you guys thought about what Carol just said. I personally was kind of blown away. I thought it was so brave of her to come on and like share her personal family story and the issues that she cares so deeply about, that she was willing to come on and publicly say, you know, how upset she was with what her brother is doing in Congress. What was your reaction to what she was saying? Laquita, I'll let you go first.
I have to commend her. I think that that's extremely difficult to air out the family dissent, if you will. I was raised in a house where we didn't air dirty laundry per se. So the fact that she had the courage of her conviction to speak out against the policy that she opposed, even though this was her blood sibling, I have to say takes a lot of courage, and I commend her for that.
What about you, Jessica? What were your thoughts watching it?
One of the things that I found very interesting and very telling of her brother's character was her family's personal struggles, health struggles, and how even having health struggles in your own family, you would still vote against that, voting with party only. Just speaks volumes, not only as a politician, but again, to his character. And that was, I was blown away by that.
Yeah, I think to me, it spoke to kind of like, just like she said about Citizens United and the corruption in our government, that you, knowing all of that about your family, still feel for whatever reason, you can't vote probably what should be your conscience and your, yeah, that kind of blew me away. I like I said, I thought it was incredibly brave to come forward and speak out. And I know that's a really hard thing to do. And I think Katie said, you know, if you speak out, you kind of worry about what people are going to say about you. And I know both of you, and I know that you guys we speak your mind. So how does that, and how do you feel about that? Like speaking up and saying what you think, even in, you know, maybe with people who don't agree with you, or in an uncomfortable situation where maybe you don't like something being said and you're speaking up about it. Jessica, I know your husband ran for office, so you were very public as a family. You know, how do you find the way or the ability to speak up, and how do you do that, or what do you feel about that?
I think it's always a good time to speak up. As far as Ian's campaign, and it was more community driven than anything. So we really listened to what the community had to say. If there was an injustice, we had no problem speaking up about it at all. I don't think there's ever a time when you shouldn't, unless, I don't think it's speaking up, or I don't think I have a problem speaking out about anything. I believe it is more so how deep you get into it. You have to know who you're speaking to, if their heart or mind, if you believe it's even going to change. if you think it's worth your time. But just speaking out, absolutely. Absolutely. I never had a problem with that.
What about you, Laquita? How do you handle that? Like the fear of maybe speaking out and being seen or branded a certain way, or being looked at differently?
I think as a Black woman, I've been looked at different my whole life. So that's something that I've just kind of learned to adapt and adjust to. One thing that I can say is, I'm from Chicago originally, and we grew up in an area of the city where when we moved there, we were the only Black family on the block. And my mother was relentless about us being just as good, no better than, but just as good as everyone else. My brother and I were the only kids of color at our elementary school. And so I'm used to sticking out and not necessarily, belonging or, going with the grain, if you will. But I feel like just as my mother did for me, it's incumbent upon me to model for my children that when you see something, you say something.
Mm-hmm.
When you need to speak up, you should do so. And I would hope that they would model that same behavior for their children. So I think that it is imperative that we as women, that we as a community do more of that, speaking up and being vocal about the injustices, the inequities, and the disparities that we see on a daily basis. Because if we don't, what example are we setting for the next generation? What do we want our kids to model? And so that's how I tend to approach situations where I may not be necessarily welcomed with, open arms, but I don't have a problem with dissenting opinions. I think dialogue is important. I don't know of any constructive, impactful change that has occurred without conflicting opinions. That's how gay rights got passed. That's how voting rights got passed. That's how Black people earn their rights, is from conflicting opinions and peaceful protest. So I think we need more of that. And I'm hoping that people will follow Carol's example and, despite the level of comfort, speak out anyway if it's the right thing to do.
100%. And I really hope that everybody watching heard that, because I think what we're trying to do at Red, Wine, and Blue is ask women to use their voices and speak out, because we really can influence other women by telling our stories and sharing our stories, just like Carol did. I mean, she, shared a very impactful story, and we have the ability to influence, and that's what we're trying to do here at Red, Wine, and Blue. That's why we really ask everybody who's watching, everybody who's involved with us to, there's at the bottom of the screen, you can see we have an app, we have a way to get involved, we have a way to use your voice, and we really help you reach out to your friends in a way that makes it easy for you to use your voice. I personally have found that when I do speak out or I do give my opinion, especially when you're sharing a personal story, I really do find that, for the most part, I get appreciation for it. I find other women are coming up to me and saying, wow, I'm really glad you said that. Like, we all see the issues and we all know they need to be addressed. Do you guys have that same reaction? I mean, I know for the most part, I'm not saying it's 100%, but I think for the most part that when you do speak your mind, especially from a personal story, you get a positive reaction to it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And when you speak your mind, you empower other women to want to speak their mind as well. They might be thinking the same thing as you, but might be timid or think, oh, well, no one else feels the same way, so I'm not going to say anything. So it helps to be the first person, or even maybe help them the next time to speak out when they wouldn't normally.
Right. I think women empower other women, and it just takes a couple people to do that, and you start the ball rolling, which is what I love about the show that we do, because you just keep seeing all these women who are using their voices to try to make a difference, no matter how uncomfortable it may be, because Carol is dealing with family issues. Laquita, how about you? How do you feel? Like, do you feel like when you speak out about something that you are, I know it's not going to be 100% positive, but do you feel like for the most part you're getting a positive reaction from people?
I do. And not only that, as Jessica said, it kind of starts a domino effect. Other people are empowered to speak out, but then you also get to hear the perspectives of other people who you probably otherwise wouldn't. I know before being invited to Red, Wine, and Blue, I probably never would have been exposed to the perspectives and experiences of women like you, Julie, and Carol and Katie. And so I'm appreciative that we have this mechanism where we can not only voice our opinions, but hear those of others because that challenges your own personal beliefs. When you hear someone else speak up about their truth and their experiences, perhaps it dispels a stereotype that you may have had, or challenges an opinion that you just knew was the right one. And that cultivates change too. So it's all relative and it all works together for the ultimate good.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like women are, one of the things we're good at is listening to each other. Maybe more, not to insult men, but I feel like women are just better at that. Like we're more open to listening to other people's stories. I know that's one thing I like to do is I feel like I always say I like to burst the bubble of like suburbia, because I feel like so many women, and especially white women, just kind of have this, I don't know, they live in a bubble and they don't see other perspectives. They just don't have those experiences. And so I like to tell stories, you know, well, you guys know my kids are biracial, so I like to tell stories about things my kids have faced in the schools or in our neighborhood. And people are usually very shocked by that. Mm-hmm. And I know that you guys obviously have shared your stories with, you know, friends and have expanded other people's perspectives. So what motivates you to speak out? Like, what are the things that you care about that make you be like, I am saying something about this?
Go ahead. You want me to go?
Go ahead, Laquita.
For me, it's definitely my kids. You know, we're in Mason, we're 4% of the population. And honestly, I just feel like we are not considered. I think we're an afterthought. I think a lot of times we get the scraps of whatever is left. I don't feel like we are in an area where everyone's experience is equitable and valuable. And so that motivates me to not only speak up, to be as loud as I absolutely have to be. And that's why, Julie, like you and I, and even Jess, we get involved in the district level, in the school buildings. You know, Jessica's husband ran bravely for school board. And I think we have to keep that up because, you know, the squeaky wheel gets the, what is it saying? The squeaky wheel gets the grease. Right. So we have to be those squeaky wheels and be vocal, because I think we have to empower people who are new to the district or just unaware of what's going on to lend their ear, their time, their talent, so that we can make impactful change, so that our kids won't have to experience the same things that are happening now.
Yeah, I love what you guys said earlier about being a role model for your kids. I totally agree. You have to live your values and let your kids see that you're doing that. So, Jessica, what motivates you? Like, what makes you really want to speak out? And
just to piggyback off of what Laquita said, everything she said, absolutely the children, but also anywhere where we see inequality, injustice, inequity, anywhere where we see that.
Well, I really appreciate you guys coming on. I told you it would be 15 minutes and it would go quickly. So I appreciate you guys coming on. And I hope that anybody who is, you know, inspired by listening to Carol, come out and be so brave, and listening to us and just our experiences, that using our voice is so important and so impactful with women. I hope that you guys will get involved with Red, Wine, and Blue. Download the Outvote app, do our campaign code, and we will make it easy for you to talk to your friends and hopefully have a big influence on this election.
Yes. All right. Vote.
Thank you for coming on. I know this was a new experience for you guys too, so you guys stepped outside your comfort zone, so I appreciate it.
Anytime.
Good night.
Good night, ladies.